In a sprawling and solitary mansion on the outskirts of the city, Samuel Fuentes, a successful entrepreneur, battling a profound sense of emptiness and stress. Despite his success in the business world, Samuel had not found the same fortune in his personal life. His mother Marta suffered from advanced Alzheimer's, and her presence in the large and silent house added a layer of tension to his already complicated life. Samuel used to have a close relationship with his mother, but everything changed when she interfered in his marriage to Laura, his ex-wife. Marta, in an act Samuel could never fully comprehend, manipulated the situation so that Laura would leave him. This event left a deep wound in Samuel, who could not forgive his mother for what he perceived as a senseless betrayal. One evening, after a long day at the office, Samuel found himself sitting alone in the mansion's living room. The silence was overwhelming, broken only by Marta's occasional noises from her room. He remembered how, years ago, that same house was full of laughter and love. Laura, with her warm smile and lively spirit, had brought light into his life. But now all that remained were shadows and painful memories. Samuel rose from the sofa and went to his study. There, in a drawer of his desk, he kept a wooden box containing photos and letters from Laura. He opened the box and began leafing through the letters, reading the loving words Laura had written to him. Each letter was a reminder of how happy he had been and what he had lost. He slumped back in his chair, holding one of the letters against his chest. Why had his mother done that? What had driven her to destroy his happiness? These questions tormented him, but he had never received a clear answer. Marta, in her current state, could not offer him any explanation. Every time he tried to talk to her about the past, her mind would be lost in the fog of Alzheimer's. Samuel closed his eyes and let the memories wash over him. The first time he saw Laura, their wedding, the trips they took together. Each image was like a knife twisting in the wound of his heart. He felt a mixture of anger and sadness consuming him slowly. Suddenly, the sound of the study door opening pulled him from his thoughts. Teresa, the faithful housekeeper, entered with a worried look. "Mr. Samuel, are you all right?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. Teresa had been with the Fuentes family for many years and knew the ups and downs of Samuel's life well. "I'm fine, Teresa," he replied, trying to hide his pain. "I just needed a moment to myself." Teresa nodded, understanding that she shouldn't push any further. "Dinner will be ready in an hour. If you need anything, I'll be in the kitchen." Samuel thanked her, and after Teresa left, he went back to his thoughts. He knew he couldn't go on living like this, trapped in a cycle of pain and resentment. He needed to find a way to heal, to leave the past behind and reconcile with his mother, even though she couldn't explain her actions. That night, as he prepared for bed, Samuel decided it was time to face his demons. Tomorrow, he would talk to Marta, try to reach her somehow, even if it was only for a moment of lucidity. He needed to understand. He needed to forgive to be able to move on. The next morning, after having breakfast in silence, he went to his mother's room. Marta was sitting by the window, staring out at the garden with a vacant expression. Samuel approached and knelt beside her, taking her hand. "Mum, it's me, Samuel," he said softly. "I need to talk to you." Marta turned her head slowly towards him. Her eyes focused briefly on her son's face before losing themselves again in the distance. Samuel felt a lump in his throat, but he continued. "Do you remember Laura? She made me very happy. I've always wondered why you did what you did. I need to understand, Mom. Please, help me understand." For a brief moment, something in Marta's gaze changed. Her lips moved as if trying to form words, but no sound came out. Samuel waited with bated breath, but Marta's lucidity was ephemeral. She returned to stare at the garden, her mind wandering to inaccessible places. Samuel gently squeezed his mother's hand and stood up, feeling a surge of frustration and sadness. He knew it would be a long and difficult process, but he was determined to find peace, not just for him, but for Marta and Laura's memory as well. That night, Samuel couldn't sleep. Memories kept him awake, stirring his mind again and again. The next morning, he decided he needed to clear his head and thought a walk in the nearby woods might help him gather his thoughts. The sun was barely beginning to rise when Samuel left the mansion. The cool morning air was invigorating, and the sounds of nature offered him temporary solace. He walked aimlessly, letting his feet carry him as his mind wandered through the recesses of his memories. Suddenly, he heard a soft sob. He stopped and listened intently, trying to locate the source of the sound. A few meters away, under a tree, he saw a little girl about 7 or 8 years old, curled up and crying. He approached cautiously, trying not to scare her. "Hello? Are you all right?" Samuel asked gently. The girl looked up, her large tear-filled eyes regarding him with distrust and fear. "I'm lost," she said, her voice broken with sobs. "I don't know how to get back to the orphanage." Samuel felt a pang of compassion. "Don't worry, I'll help you find your way back. What's your name?" "Catalina," the girl replied, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "Hello, Catalina. I'm Samuel. Come on, let's go to my house first. We'll get you something to eat, and then we'll see how to find your way back." He offered her his hand, and after a moment of hesitation, Catalina took it. On the way back to the mansion, Samuel thought about how Teresa would react. He knew the housekeeper was strict and didn't like unexpected changes, but he couldn't leave Catalina alone in the woods. Upon reaching the mansion, Teresa met them at the door with an expression of surprise and distrust. "Mr. Samuel, who is this child?" "This is Catalina. I found her lost in the woods. We'll take care of her until we find the orphanage where she lives." Samuel spoke firmly, anticipating Teresa's opposition. "We can't just bring strangers into the house," Teresa protested. "It could be dangerous." "Teresa, this child needs our help. I'm not leaving her alone. If you have a problem with that, we can discuss it later. Now, please prepare something to eat for Catalina." Teresa frowned, but she nodded and went to the kitchen. Samuel took Catalina to the living room where he settled her on the sofa. "Are you hungry?" he asked. Catalina nodded timidly. "Yes, a little." While they waited for the food, Samuel tried to make Catalina feel more comfortable. "How long have you been at the orphanage?" he asked. "Not long," Catalina replied in a low voice. "My parents died a year ago, and I have no other relatives." Samuel's heart sank at hearing this. "I'm so sorry, Catalina. It must be very difficult for you." Catalina just nodded, and the silence that followed was heavy with a shared sadness. Teresa appeared with a plate of food and placed it in front of Catalina. "Eat slowly, child," she said, her tone softer than usual. While Catalina ate, Samuel and Teresa stepped aside to speak privately. "I understand your concerns, Teresa, but we can't leave this girl helpless. We must find the orphanage and make sure she gets back safe and sound." Teresa sighed. "I know you have a good heart, Mr. Samuel, but we must be careful." "We will," Samuel assured her. "But first, we must make sure Catalina is okay." The hours passed slowly. Samuel called various institutions and orphanages in the city, trying to find any information about Catalina. However, he had no luck. Meanwhile, Catalina explored the mansion with a mixture of wonder and shyness. At the end of the day, Samuel decided that Catalina would stay at the mansion until they could locate her orphanage. Teresa prepared a room for the girl, and although she still showed reluctance, she began to accept the situation. That night, after making sure Catalina was comfortable, Samuel sat in his study, reflecting on the unexpected turn his day had taken. Catalina's presence had brought a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in a long time. Despite the challenges and unanswered questions, he felt he had done the right thing. He closed his eyes for a moment, remembering Laura's words in one of her letters. "Always follow your heart, Samuel. In it, you will find the strength to do what is right." Catalina's first few days at the mansion were a mixture of wonder and adaptation. For a girl who had lived in difficult conditions, the opulence of the mansion was something completely new. Every corner, every hallway, and every room held a story and a mystery for her. One morning, as Samuel was getting ready for work, Catalina woke up early. The sunlight filtered gently through the curtains, illuminating the room with a warm glow. Samuel, seeing the girl awake, smiled. "Good morning, Catalina. Did you sleep well?" he asked as he adjusted his tie in front of the mirror. "Yes, thank you," Catalina replied with a shy smile. "It's the most comfortable bed I've ever slept in." Samuel was touched by the simplicity and gratitude in Catalina's words. "I'm glad to hear that. You'll be with Teresa today while I go to work. Be good, okay?" Catalina nodded, still a little nervous at the thought of being alone with Teresa, who continued to show a certain coldness towards her. Samuel leaned down and gave her a light hug before leaving the room. "See you later, Catalina," he said, before leaving. Once Samuel was gone, Teresa entered the room to supervise Catalina's breakfast. "Come along, child. It's time for breakfast," she said, her tone less severe than usual. Although Teresa wouldn't admit it, Catalina's presence was beginning to soften her heart. During breakfast, Catalina watched with fascination the large kitchen. The walls were adorned with old and modern utensils, and the aroma of freshly made food filled the air. After eating, Teresa took her to the living room. "You have to stay here. I don't want you wandering around the house unsupervised," Teresa warned. Catalina, with her inquisitive nature, nodded, but she was already planning to explore as soon as she had the chance. The opportunity came when Teresa was distracted by a phone call. Catalina seized the moment and slipped out of the room, beginning her exploration. Each room she discovered amazed her. Long hallways, rooms decorated with antique furniture, and paintings that told stories of bygone eras. Catalina felt like an adventurer in an enchanted castle. Finally, she came to a door that was slightly ajar. Cautiously, she pushed it open and entered a room that clearly belonged to an elderly person. The heavy curtains and antique furniture gave it a solemn air. In a chair by the window sat Marta, Samuel's mother, staring out at the garden without really seeing anything. Catalina approached slowly. "Hello," she said softly so as not to frighten her. Marta turned her head towards the voice, but her gaze remained lost. Catalina sat in a nearby chair and began to speak. "My name is Catalina. Samuel found me in the woods and he's helping me." Marta didn't answer, but Catalina continued. "Sometimes, when I'm sad, I like to remember the nice things in my life, like when I used to play with my puppy before he went away." As she spoke, Catalina watched Marta carefully. Although there wasn't much reaction, she decided to keep telling her stories, thinking that maybe, somehow, her presence and her words could reach the old woman. My mum taught me how to make paper figures, Catalina continued, taking out a piece of paper she had found in the room. She began to fold it skillfully, forming a small bird. She said that these paper birds can carry our wishes to heaven. Marta stared at the paper, and for a brief moment, Catalina thought she saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes. With renewed hope, Catalina kept talking, telling stories of her life, her dreams, and her hopes. Although Marta remained silent, Catalina felt there was something special about those shared moments. Meanwhile, Teresa, realizing Catalina's absence, began searching for her throughout the house. When she finally found her in Marta's room, she stopped dead in her tracks upon seeing the scene. Catalina was sitting next to Marta, talking to her softly, the little paper bird in her hand. "What are you doing here?" Teresa asked, trying to keep her tone firm, but unable to hide the surprise in her voice. "I was just telling Mrs. Marta stories," Catalina replied innocently. "I think she likes to listen." Teresa watched the expression on Marta's face, and for the first time, she saw a slight softening of her features. She decided not to interrupt. "All right," she finally said, "but you mustn't walk around the house alone. It's dangerous." Catalina nodded, grateful for Teresa's indulgence. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Let's go," Teresa said, softening her tone. "It's time for lunch." Catalina said goodbye to Marta and followed Teresa out of the room, feeling content to have spent some time with the old woman. That day, as Catalina adjusted to her new surroundings, Samuel couldn't stop thinking about her. He felt a special connection with the girl and was determined to protect and care for her. Catalina, with her innocence and curiosity, had begun to awaken something in him, something he hadn't felt since losing Laura. That night, after dinner, Samuel sat down at his desk and wrote in his journal. "Today, Catalina found her way to my mother's heart. Perhaps in time, she will also find the way to heal mine." The following days brought an unusual calm to the mansion. Catalina, with her childlike curiosity and affable nature, began to integrate into the household routine. Teresa, although initially skeptical, began to see something special in the girl. Catalina helped with small chores, always with a smile on her face, and found time to sit with Marta, telling her stories and sharing moments of silence that spoke louder than words. One afternoon, as Catalina swept the leaves from the garden, Samuel watched her from a window in his study. He saw her move with grace and diligence, as if every task, however small, had a purpose. His heart filled with a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. After making sure Catalina was entertained in the garden, Samuel went to find Teresa in the kitchen. He found her preparing afternoon tea, and seeing her so focused, he wondered how to approach the subject that had been on his mind. "Teresa, can I speak with you for a moment?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Teresa looked up from the tray and nodded. "Of course, Mr. Samuel. What is it?" Samuel took a breath, and in a serious voice, began to explain his intention. "I've been thinking a lot about Catalina. She's a wonderful girl, and I think she's brought a light into this house that we desperately needed." Teresa nodded slowly, listening intently. "I want her to stay here, Teresa. I want to offer her a permanent home. I've been considering the possibility of adopting her." Teresa fell silent for a moment, processing Samuel's words. Finally, she spoke carefully. "Mr. Samuel, I understand your feelings. Catalina is a special girl and she's brought much joy to the house. But adoption is a very big step. Are you sure you're ready for that responsibility?" Samuel nodded firmly. I am, Teresa. I'm not taking this decision lightly. Catalina deserves a home and a family that loves her, and I feel we can be that for her. Teresa sighed, her thoughts a mixture of concern and hope. I've seen how well she gets along with Mrs. Marta and how happy she seems here. But we must also think about what is best for Catalina. I don't want her to suffer any more drastic changes in her life. Of course, Samuel replied. I want what's best for her. That's why I need your support. Catalina trusts you, and I want to make sure she feels safe and loved here. Teresa, touched by Samuel's sincerity, nodded. If you've made up your mind, I will support you in whatever you need. Catalina deserves a chance to be happy. Samuel smiled, grateful. Thank you, Teresa. I haven't spoken to Catalina about this yet. I want to make sure everything is in order first. But your support means a lot to me. Teresa smiled slightly. I understand, Mr. Samuel. We'll do everything we can to make this work. Meanwhile, in the garden, Catalina had finished sweeping the leaves and was heading towards the living room, where Marta sat in her usual armchair. Catalina approached her and smiled. Hello, Mrs. Marta. Would you like to hear another story today? Marta, though her mind was mostly lost in the fog of Alzheimer's, seemed to recognize Catalina's voice and smiled back. Catalina sat next to her and began to talk about the little adventures of her life, about how she had once found a lost kitten and cared for it until she found it a home. Marta listened, her eyes shining with a clarity rarely seen. Catalina, although not always receiving a verbal response, felt that somehow she was reaching the old woman. These daily interactions were not only important to Marta, but also to Catalina, who found in them a sense of purpose and connection. That night, as Catalina prepared for bed, she couldn't help but feel grateful for the kindness of Samuel and Teresa, and for the companionship of Marta. Although she didn't fully understand the complexities of the situation, she knew she was in a safe and loving place. The next day, Samuel decided it was time to talk to Catalina about his plans. He called her to his study and had her sit in a chair facing him. Catalina, a little nervous, looked at Samuel curiously. Catalina, I want to talk to you about something important, Samuel began, trying to find the right words. Since you arrived at this house, you've brought a lot of joy into our lives. I've grown very fond of you, and I think you've grown fond of us too. Catalina nodded timidly. Yes, Mr. Samuel, I really like it here. Samuel smiled, feeling a surge of affection for the little girl. I've been thinking about something, and I want to know how you would feel about it. I would like you to stay here, in this house, as part of our family. I would like to adopt you, Catalina. Catalina's eyes widened with surprise and excitement. Really? You really want me to stay? Yes, Catalina, Samuel replied, his voice soft but firm. I want this to be your house, your home. I want to be your family. Catalina felt her heart swell with happiness. She jumped up from her chair and hugged Samuel tightly. Yes, please. I would love to stay. That night, as he prepared for bed, Samuel wrote in his journal once again, Today, I offered Catalina a home and a family. She has accepted with joy. Now, a new chapter begins in our lives. Together, we will find the peace and happiness we have been searching for. The following weeks brought renewed calm and joy to the mansion. Catalina felt more and more at home, and her relationship with Samuel and Teresa grew stronger every day. Marta also seemed calmer and happier, enjoying Catalina's company. One afternoon while exploring the mansion, Catalina decided to clean the attic, a place that had been closed for a long time. Teresa had given her permission on the condition that she be careful and not touch anything important without asking. Catalina eagerly agreed, seeing this as a new adventure. The attic was full of dusty boxes, antique furniture, and forgotten memories. As she cleaned, she found an old wooden box. Opening it, she discovered a worn leather notebook. Catalina's curiosity led her to leaf through the yellowed pages, discovering that it was an old diary. Sitting on the attic floor, Catalina began to read the entries, intrigued by the stories they contained. She soon realized that the diary belonged to Marta and contained intimate details of her life and family. One particular entry caught her eye. Marta described the moment Laura, Samuel's ex-wife, confessed to her that she had leukemia. Laura hadn't wanted Samuel to suffer watching her deteriorate and asked Marta to help facilitate the divorce. Marta, although it broke her heart to do so, agreed to Laura's request, believing she was protecting her son. Catalina felt a mixture of sadness and understanding as she read these words. She realized that Marta had acted with the best of intentions, although Samuel had never understood. She decided that Samuel had to know the truth and bravely resolved to talk to him that very night. When Samuel returned from work, Catalina was waiting for him in the living room, diary in hand. "Samuel, I found something I think you should see," she said, handing him the notebook. Samuel took the diary curiously and sat down to read the pages Catalina had marked. As he read, his expression morphed from surprise to understanding and finally to pain. He closed the diary and looked at Catalina with tear-filled eyes. "Why didn't she tell me anything?" Samuel whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Catalina went to him and took his hand. "She thought she was protecting you. Laura didn't want you to suffer more than necessary." Samuel nodded slowly, assimilating the truth. "I always thought my mother had betrayed me. I never knew it was all for Laura's sake." Catalina hugged him, offering what comfort she could. Samuel clung to her, feeling like he could finally let go of years of resentment and pain. That night, Samuel decided to talk to Marta about what he had discovered. He entered his mother's room, who was sitting by the window as usual. He knelt beside her and took her hand. "Mom, I read your diary," he began, his voice soft. "Now I understand why you did what you did. Laura asked you to help me cope with her illness." Marta turned her head slowly towards Samuel, and for a brief moment, her eyes showed a flicker of recognition and emotion. "I'm so sorry, son," she murmured, her voice weak. "I just wanted to protect you." Samuel hugged her tightly, feeling that, even if only for an instant, they had recovered some of their lost bond. "I forgive you, Mom. Thank you for loving me so much." Catalina watched from the doorway, feeling a deep satisfaction as she saw how her discovery had healed an important part of Samuel's life. She knew the road ahead would still be long, but now there was hope and understanding. In the following days, the atmosphere in the mansion changed noticeably. Samuel and Marta seemed more at peace, and Catalina continued to bring joy and light into their lives. Teresa, observing these changes, felt grateful for the girl's presence. One morning, while Catalina and Marta were together in the garden, Samuel joined them. "Catalina, I want to thank you for everything you've done for us," he said with a smile. "You've changed our lives in ways I can't describe." Catalina smiled shyly. "I'm happy here too. I feel part of a family." Samuel leaned down and kissed her forehead. "You are Catalina. You always will be." That night, Samuel wrote in his journal once again, "Today I have found the peace I so longed for." Catalina has been a gift in our lives, and I am grateful for every day we spend together. With her by our side, I know we can face anything. The weeks that followed were a time of renewal and hope in the mansion. Catalina's presence had brought a warmth and joy that everyone needed. Teresa, initially reluctant, began to see Catalina with new eyes, appreciating the kindness and positive energy the girl radiated. Samuel, for his part, dedicated himself more to caring for his mother. He spent hours talking to Marta, telling her about his day, remembering old times, and often simply being by her side. These moments not only strengthened the bond between mother and son, but also helped Samuel to better understand and fully forgive Marta. Catalina also played a crucial role in Marta's life. Every afternoon, after finishing her schoolwork and helping Teresa with the housework, Catalina would sit next to Marta and tell her stories. Sometimes they were made-up tales. Other times they were memories from her own life before coming to the mansion. Catalina had also found an old guitar in the attic, and although at first she didn't know how to play it well, she made an effort to learn some simple melodies that she played for Marta. One afternoon, while Catalina was practicing a song on the guitar, Marta had a moment of lucidity. Her eyes focused on Catalina, and a smile spread across her face. That song. Laura used to play it, Marta said, her voice weak but clear. Catalina, surprised and moved, replied softly, "Yes, I found the sheet music in the attic. I'm glad you like it, Mrs. Marta." Marta nodded slowly, her gaze still fixed on Catalina. "Thank you, dear. You bring me many happy memories." Catalina continued playing, feeling that, even if for a moment she had managed to connect with Marta on a deep level. Meanwhile, Samuel watched from the doorway, touched by the scene. Seeing his mother smile and remember, even if only for a few minutes, gave him immense satisfaction. He realized how much his life had changed since Catalina's arrival, and how this little girl had managed to heal so many wounds. That night, after putting Catalina to bed and making sure Marta was comfortable, Samuel sat down in his study with a cup of tea. He remembered the dreams he used to have with Laura, about the family they wanted to build together. They had always imagined having a daughter, and seeing Catalina, he couldn't help but feel a mixture of happiness and sadness. Overwhelmed by these thoughts, Samuel picked up a photo of Laura that he kept on his desk. "Laura, I know you're not here, but I hope you can see us and know that we're okay," he whispered, feeling a tear roll down his cheek. "Catalina has filled a void in my life that I thought could never be healed." The next day, as they were having breakfast, Samuel decided to talk to Teresa about the changes they had experienced. "Teresa, I want to thank you for everything you've done for us," he said, with a sincere smile. "I know it was difficult to accept Catalina at first, but your support has been invaluable." Teresa, who was pouring the tea, paused for a moment and smiled slightly. "Mr. Samuel, I must admit that I had my doubts at first. But Catalina is a special girl. She has brought light into this house, and we have all changed for the better thanks to her." Samuel nodded, feeling a deep gratitude. "I want you to know that I value your help and dedication very much. We are all a family now, and I couldn't have done it without you." Teresa nodded, touched by Samuel's words. "We're in this together, Mr. Samuel, and I will do everything I can to make sure Catalina always feels loved and protected here." That same day, Samuel decided to take Catalina and Marta for a walk in the mansion's gardens. It was a sunny afternoon, and the fresh air seemed to revitalize everyone. Catalina ran among the flowers, picking some to make a bouquet for Marta. Samuel pushed his mother's wheelchair, enjoying the tranquility of the moment. "Catalina, come here," Samuel called when they reached a small fountain in the center of the garden. Catalina ran towards them, holding the bouquet of flowers. "These are for you, Mrs. Marta," Catalina said, handing her the bouquet with a radiant smile. Marta took the flowers and smelled them, smiling tenderly. "Thank you, dear. They are beautiful, just like you." Samuel sat down beside them, feeling a peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. "These are the kinds of moments I always dreamed of having," he said softly, more to himself than to the others. "A united and happy family." Catalina sat beside him, resting her head on Samuel's shoulder. "I'm very happy here too, Samuel. I really feel part of this family." Samuel hugged her, feeling a wave of love and gratitude. He knew he had found something precious, something Laura had always wanted for him. A family full of love and understanding. That night, while everyone slept, Samuel sat down once again in his study and wrote in his journal, "Today, I have seen what it really means to have a family. Marta, Catalina, Teresa, and I have created a bond that nothing can break. Laura, I know you are with us in spirit, and I promise to take care of this family with all my heart." With the dawn came a new day full of promise. Samuel knew there was an important step he needed to take to officially solidify Catalina as part of his family. To begin the adoption process. Determined, he called his lawyer and scheduled an appointment to discuss the details. At the meeting, the lawyer, an experienced and trustworthy man, listened carefully to the story of Samuel and Catalina. "It seems you have a strong case, Samuel. Catalina has been living with you and has formed a significant emotional bond with your family. This is very positive for the adoption process." "How long do you think it will take?" Samuel asked, concerned about possible complications. "With the correct documentation and Catalina's history, we could complete the process in a few months. But bear in mind that there may be inspections and interviews to make sure everything is in order," the lawyer explained. Samuel nodded, determined to go ahead. "I'll do whatever it takes to make sure Catalina stays with us." Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Catalina was getting ready for her first day back at school. Teresa had helped her choose her uniform and prepare her backpack. Catalina was excited and a little nervous. Although she had enjoyed her time at the mansion very much, she knew that school was an important part of her life. "Everything will be fine, Catalina. You're a very intelligent and kind girl. You'll make lots of new friends," Teresa assured her as she combed her hair. "Thank you, Teresa. I'm a little nervous, but excited too," Catalina replied with a smile. When Samuel arrived home, he found Catalina ready and full of energy for her first day. "You look very pretty, Catalina. I'm sure you'll do great at school," he said, giving her a hug. The first day of school was a success. Catalina made new friends quickly and felt welcomed by her teachers and classmates. Upon returning home, she couldn't wait to share her experiences with Samuel and Teresa. "It was an amazing day. I made lots of friends and we learned new things in class. Miss Rodriguez is very nice, and she said I can ask her anything if I need help," Catalina recounted enthusiastically during dinner. "I'm so happy to hear that, Catalina. School is a very important place to learn and grow," Samuel said, feeling proud. Over time, the routine was established in the mansion. Samuel divided his time between work and family, finding a balance that brought him peace and satisfaction. Teresa continued to be a fundamental pillar, supporting everyone with her dedication and affection. Marta, although her health was still fragile, had moments of lucidity that filled the house with hope. One afternoon, while Samuel was working in his study, he received a call from his lawyer. "Samuel, I have good news. Catalina's adoption process is moving forward without a hitch. The necessary documents have been approved, and there's only a final home inspection left." "That's fantastic. Thank you so much," Samuel replied, feeling relieved and happy. The inspection was a success. The inspector was impressed by the loving and safe environment Catalina had found at the mansion. Shortly after, Samuel received the news that the adoption was officially approved. Catalina was now legally part of his family. "Catalina, I have great news for you," Samuel announced one afternoon as they were all gathered in the living room. "What is it, Samuel?" Catalina asked, her eyes full of curiosity. Samuel knelt down to her level and showed her the adoption papers. "As of today, you are officially my daughter. You are part of our family forever." Catalina looked at him with tears of happiness in her eyes. "Really? Forever?" "Yes, forever," Samuel confirmed, hugging her tightly. The joy in the mansion was palpable. Teresa and Marta joined the embrace, celebrating the news that had brought the family even closer. With the adoption finalized, Catalina continued to adjust to her new life with confidence and happiness. At school, she stood out not only for her intelligence, but also for her kindness and willingness to help others. At home, she continued to be a source of joy and love for everyone. One afternoon, as Samuel and Catalina were playing in the garden, Marta watched them from her chair by the window. "Laura would be so proud of you, Samuel," she thought, feeling a deep peace. Catalina, running towards Marta with a flower in her hand, gave it to her with a radiant smile. "For you, Grandma Marta."
Lord, I know you're with us in spirit, and I promise to take care of this family with all my heart. What I ended up is in, and it is the simple mother in children. Samuel, and the music approached the courtesy. Catalina, that's wonderful. How did you make the pay? I've been practicing with the music of Catalina. Samuel was touched by Catalina's natural talent and decided to support her in her newfound passion. If you like music, we can learn to be dedicated more. Would you like that? Yes, I'd like it. It's still Catalina. Otherwise, surely you would accept it. Teresa, we have been watching from the doorway all this time.
"She has a gift, Mr. Samuel. It would be wonderful if she could develop it." With Samuel's help, Catalina began taking piano lessons. She progressed quickly and soon began to play more complicated pieces. Marta, although her health was still fragile, enjoyed listening to Catalina play. Those musical moments brought a special light to the mansion, filling the home with melodies and joy. One day, while Samuel and Catalina were practicing together, Samuel began to reflect on the importance of giving an opportunity to other children who, like Catalina, needed a home and a loving family. The idea of adopting more children began to take shape in his mind. He had experienced firsthand the positive impact Catalina had had on their lives and wanted to extend that kindness to others. One evening during dinner, Samuel decided to share his thoughts with Teresa and Catalina. "I've been thinking a lot lately," Samuel began, looking at both of them seriously. "Catalina's arrival has been a blessing to us. I would like to extend that blessing to other children who need a home. I am considering adopting more children." Teresa was surprised but quickly nodded in understanding. "It's a noble idea, Mr. Samuel. If we can offer them a safe and loving home, it would be wonderful." Catalina, excited, chimed in. "I'd love to have more brothers and sisters. We can be a big family and take care of each other." The decision was made. Samuel contacted the adoption agency and began the necessary paperwork to adopt more children. The process was long and full of challenges, but Samuel was determined to offer a home to those who needed it most. Meanwhile, Catalina continued to excel in music. Her talent not only made her happy, but it also brought the family together in a special way. Marta, though increasingly frail, found solace in the melodies Catalina played. Samuel, for his part, was increasingly proud of his daughter. Finally, after months of paperwork and evaluations, Samuel received the news that the adoption of 2 new children had been approved. The family was thrilled to welcome the new members and prepared everything for their arrival. The day the children arrived at the mansion was a day full of joy and tears of happiness. Catalina welcomed them with hugs and a radiant smile, while Teresa and Samuel showed them their new home. "Welcome to your new home," Samuel said, his heart filled with gratitude. "Here you will find love, security, and a family that will always be there for you." The new children, although shy at first, soon began to adapt and feel part of the family. The mansion, once a place of loneliness and pain, was now filled with laughter and love. Despite her increasingly fragile health, Marta observed these changes with a serene smile. She felt a deep satisfaction in seeing how her son had created a family full of love and hope. One day, Samuel decided to take Catalina to visit Laura's grave. He wanted to share with her all that he had accomplished and thank her for the inspiration she had always been in his life. At the cemetery, Samuel and Catalina knelt before Laura's grave. Samuel spoke in a low voice, as if Laura could hear him. "Laura, we have built a beautiful family. Catalina, the new children and I are doing well. Thank you for all the love you gave me and for inspiring me to move forward." Catalina, holding Samuel's hand, added, "Thank you, Laura. I promise I will take care of Dad and all my new siblings." As they walked away from the cemetery, Samuel felt a profound peace. He knew the future was full of challenges, but also hope and love. With his family by his side, he was ready to face whatever came his way. And so, in the mansion filled with life and laughter, Samuel, Catalina, Marta, Teresa, and the new children found the happiness and love they had all been searching for. Together, they knew they could face anything, as long as they were united as a true family. The story of Samuel, Catalina, Marta, and Teresa is a moving tale about the importance of love, family, and resilience. It teaches us that even in the midst of pain and loss, it is possible to find hope and happiness. Catalina's arrival transforms the mansion into a home full of laughter and love, demonstrating that compassion and generosity can heal the deepest wounds. The adoption of more children highlights the power of unconditional love and the positive impact of offering a safe home to those who need it most. This story reminds us that family is not just about blood, but also about heart. If you found this story as heartwarming as we did, please like and comment to let us know how you feel. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other meaningful stories.